Was there agreement? Was there disagreement? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm Oral Hershiser, and I am on the Blue Review. Hey, this is Sean Green. You're watching the Blue Review.
Bum, 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 bum. Ring! What's going on? Welcome back to the Blue Review. You will notice there is no Marcas Grant. Today we have Anthony Witrato with us, like we have every single Friday. So it's just going to be me and Anthony Witrato, and we're going to be talking about all the things we want to talk about, Dodger Nation wise. But I started off this morning. I threw a little curveball at Anthony as soon as I got onto the stream with him. I have a hot take, and I'm not sure if anybody thinks it's a hot take, but I just ate an Uncrustable, and I would take an Uncrustable over any homemade peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Is that a hot take, Anthony?
I think it's a lukewarm take. I think Uncrustables are good. You're moving, you're on the go. For you, you're popping them at 6:30 in the morning. So, you might not have time to wake up and make your own peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I will say, I don't know if I would take it over any, because, if you take the time to make your own, you can hook that bad boy up, right? But
yeah, it's a blanket statement, right? Yeah. So, there's a little bit more to it, but there's always going to be some better. But for the most part, most people make them. They use either the wrong peanut butter or the jelly. There's too much jelly, too much peanut butter. The Uncrustable, it's like a perfect blend of peanut butter and jelly, and they cut off all the edges for you. It's wonderful.
They knock it out, man. My toddler loves them.
Yeah. You don't like them? You don't eat them?
I don't eat them often, but they're good. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. They're delicious. And I'm very happy that I happened to find one and eat one just now. Anyway, this is a Dodger show, so we probably should be talking about the Dodgers. The Dodgers
have Uncrustables in the clubhouse.
Right. So the Dodgers are now 4-2, and they are still lead the NL West, but at the same time, we've been talking a lot about, the offense and what guys not hitting, the only one hitting is really is Andy Pages, and I would even add in Freddie Freeman, despite the fact that his numbers are low. He was barreling up a lot of balls, so he's getting bat on ball and looking good. It's just they haven't been falling yet. What do you attribute all this to? And are you like a lot of Dodger fans that I see on my timeline, which is crazy? Get rid of Robert Van Scoyoc.
Yeah, this again. No, I am not that fan. Look, it's 6 games, and that's way, way, way too small of a sample size when you're talking about the season being 162, and we're 1 week into 6 months. So is it frustrating to watch on a nightly basis? Absolutely, of course. I feel that pain. But to make any blanket judgments about where the offense is or what they're going to be all season long right now, it's just that's not smart. And I had somebody on my timeline talking about, well, this is a thing that happened last year, and so that's relevant because they were bad last year. They were bad in the playoffs when you're facing the Phillies and the Brewers and the Blue Jays, who are, the playoffs bring the best pitching that your league has to offer typically. And so, all offenses are going to kind of, take a dive a little bit. But over the course of the season, they were universally pretty much known as the second best offense in all of baseball by any metric that you want to use, ex-banana, Greg, or, whatever.
It's the best stat.
Yeah. Well, whatever you want to use, they were basically the second best offense in baseball. And you don't get to that point over the course of a season by having one good month and then stinking for the rest of the season. It's, sure, they had down stretches and things like that, but for the most part, the offense was really, really good. I think this conversation goes away if they walk into DC today and they score, 16 runs over the course of 3 games, as long as 12 of those don't come in one setting. Then I think this conversation kind of goes away, and that's why it's too early to have it, because you can have one good offensive series and then it's like, oh, okay, well maybe they're not so bad after all.
So what I always go back to, and I've mentioned this on the radio yesterday, I think I mentioned it on Blue Review yesterday with Marcas, is that last year the top 4 offenses according to runs scored were the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Brewers. And this year, right now, the Brewers are actually scoring some runs. They're at a high pace, but for the other 3, Dodgers, Yankees, Brewers, Dodgers have scored 23 runs. The Yankees have scored 24 runs. The Blue Jays have scored 27 runs. These teams are going to be the top teams in terms of runs scored at the end of the season. What they are right now, after spring training, pitching is usually ahead of the hitting, and especially against these good teams. So it's not a worry about anything. It's more so like, it's frustrating, like you say. It's annoying to watch the games and only scoring 1 run or 4 runs, or not being able to put runners in scoring position or hit extra base hits. They're going back to the living with the home run or dying by the home run, because that's how they get their runs to come from behind to beat the Diamondbacks. So it's just a frustrating watch, but I know a lot of fans are getting a little bit upset and blaming certain things. There's also this stat that I don't believe in, but it's true for the most part. Since May 31st of 2025, the Dodgers scored 62 runs, or won 62 games. The Miami Marlins won 62 games. Like, that's gonna, it's true. The Marlins got crazy hot at the end, but did the Marlins make the playoffs? Did the Marlins go to the World Series? Did the Marlins win the World Series? These are all just silly stats that you can kind of manipulate to what you want.
Yeah, baseball's such a long season. You're going to have these kinds of anomalies happen. It doesn't mean anything. Anyone try to draw any conclusions about the abilities of the Marlins versus the Dodgers based on that is that's a fool's errand. But I'll say this too: when the sample sizes are this small, a thing you can look at is approach. And I think the Dodgers, for the most part, have had a pretty good approach. You look at guys who have struggled. Freddie Freeman, I'm never going to question that guy's approach. He rarely comes out of it. For him, it's typically like maybe swing mechanics or the ball just not falling, a little bit of bad luck. So his approach has been fine. Mookie Betts is another guy. His approach this season looks vastly different than it did in the middle, in that middle third of last season. When the ball's not falling for him, he tends to pop up. And that's just kind of the thing. I think people maybe forget that because we've seen so much success from Mookie. But his approach is good. He's still not chasing a ton out of the zone. He's taking walks. I think he'll be fine. The approach for me looks better. I think when he was really bad last year, we saw him get out of that a little bit. Kyle Tucker, another guy. The swing and miss right now is a little like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know how you missed that one as being Kyle Tucker. But again, the approach has been good. Not a lot of chase there. So I think you look at things like that and you go, okay, as long as they keep that going, these guys are going to eventually find it and they'll be fine.
Yeah, so I want to. You mentioned both Mookie Betts and Kyle Tucker, and I wanted to have conversations about both of those guys. So let's start with Mookie because he's been around the longest, and he's a perennial MVP when he's right. He's a top 5 player in all of baseball when he is right. Over the last 2 years, we have seen Mookie Betts not been right. I agree with you. The approach right now is a ton better. It's looking a lot better. But if Mookie Betts is anything like he was in the last couple of years, he's playing great defense. Like we'll just take the defensive side out of it because he's a Gold Glove level shortstop with the way he's playing at shortstop. Not saying he's going to win the Gold Glove, but he's a Gold Glove level shortstop. So just at the plate, is that something that actually worries you? And I hear you on the approach, but he has not been good the last couple of years and is currently not there. How long till you start saying, okay, something's wrong with Mook?
I think if we did not know the context of his season last year and we did not see the last 2 months of that season be pretty good, like all-star caliber offensive performer. 1 month was better than the other, but you take the course of those 2 months and he was a really good hitter. Then I would say this is pretty concerning. We know the context of why he was bad, at least partly, right? The illness, the stuff going on off the field for him, contributed to that. He said as much. And then we did see him find it and go, you know what? I'm not worried about my stat line anymore. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to try to perform and not think about how bad the rest of the season has gone. And he took off. And for a while there was a stretch there where he was probably the best hitter in that lineup. And so had we not had those things, I'd be a lot more concerned. And right now, I think his approach looks back to where, top shelf Mookie Betts is. Is he ever going to get back to the MVP caliber Mookie Betts? I don't think so. And I've said that on our Dodger Blue show. I think I've probably said it here too. I don't think he gets back to that guy anymore, but I think he's still an all-star caliber offensive player. I think he could still reach those heights. So I think it's too early. It's too early for me. I know some people have made that declaration a year ago, basically, to say that this guy is washed.
Yeah, but you don't need him to be what he was as as an all-star. I mean, he needs to be all-star level. He doesn't need to be MVP level. You need him to get to certain levels because he's in that 3 spot, because he has the 2 guys in front of him that he has in front of him. He needs to at least be able to drive in some runs and be the guy in the middle of the lineup that is continuing to move down the line, hit a couple of home runs, move the line around. And he needs to be somebody that's going to have a high RBI mark because that's kind of where he is in the lineup. So I am not worried about him either. I actually think I love what he did in the offseason, how he's using the javelin and all those things. I just wonder sometimes if all those things and saying how great he looks in the cage and all that, and it's not translating to the field. It's something for me to watch over, mostly over any of the other guys in the lineup for the most part. Mookie is the guy that I watch offensively the most for that. The other guy you mentioned was Kyle Tucker, and Kyle Tucker is coming over here. He's got a $60 million contract. There's a lot of weight on his shoulders. When he was signed, it was under the guise of, hey, you don't have to be the number 1 guy. You actually should be like the 5th guy. You're probably the 2nd best overall player on this team after Shohei Ohtani. But at the same time, you don't need to feel like everything's on your shoulders. But he still has that contract that he has to pay for. He decided to do essentially a prove it contract because he did 4 years instead of giving a 10-year contract. So there's probably still a lot of weight there. And I also think that there's maybe when guys were on base for him early in the season, not through 6 games, probably like 2 through 2 or 3, he actually got some hits and was driving in runs. So where are you at with Kyle Tucker with the fact that is there a little bit of weight on his shoulder? Is he kind of pressing a little bit?
I think he might be. I think there are some things where we talked about his approach a little earlier, and it's still generally pretty good, but he is swinging a lot more. And that's something that's a little uncharacteristic of him. It's only been 2 series, but he's swinging at more than half the pitches he sees, which is typically in the mid to low 40s for him. At least it has been the last couple of seasons. So I think some of this stuff is just going to take, maybe 100 plate appearances to sort of stabilize. But like I said, I think the swing and miss so far has been a little surprising, especially on balls in the zone. And that's typically not characteristic of who he is. So I think that may be some of it, trying to impress, trying to get off to a good start, that kind of thing. I think he'll eventually settle in. Maybe also getting back on the road and away from Dodger fans where, maybe that sort of mental desire to do well for the home team, for the home fans, can kind of kick in and so getting on the road, getting to DC, maybe he kind of settles in. Maybe he's got a feast on, a couple of bad starting pitchers or something like that to get himself, get his mindset right and back to who he is. But he's a guy that I'm definitely not worried about. He's been far too consistent over the last, 5 seasons. I think for us to be oh yeah, this guy's totally done now.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to. I'm not worried about really anybody right now, but at the same time, we have to talk about this 5 days a week at 6:30 in the
Totally.
morning on the Blue Review. So I got to
Yeah,
find things
I get it.
to have some discourse on. But I agree with that too. I think there is always that to getting that first home run at Dodger Stadium, to getting that, getting the fans like
Yeah.
fully on your side. There is still a little bit of pressure, and now they're going to go on the road to Washington. And so let's get into a little bit of that. But before we do, I always got to let you know that the Blue Review is brought to you by, it's powered by LAX. Excuse me. We're taking off. Learn more about all the incredible changes happening now at LAX by going to lawa.org/ESPN. So going to Washington. And Emmet Sheehan is going to be on the mound. It's going to be a mix of Emmet Sheehan, Tyler Glasnow, and Roki Sasaki. Now, those are the three guys, probably not Glasnow as much, but Sheehan and Sasaki are kind of the two guys that I worry about the most. If you're going to worry about somebody, not fully worried, but if you're going to worry about somebody in the pitching staff, those are the two guys. And Washington is hitting the ball. They're scoring runs. They are doing it at a much higher clip than almost anybody in the league right now. Washington has 38 runs. Well, they're up near the top, definitely more than the Dodgers. So they can hit, and they're young and they're scrappy, and it's some of those types of teams. What are you feeling with Emmet Sheehan? Because he was not great in his first start, and he, is having a little bit of struggles at times. But how do you feel about Emmet Sheehan and what you've seen in his one start? His one start.
Yeah. Yes. I'm generally still confident about Emmet Sheehan. That start was interesting only in the fact that I thought his command was spotty, but that can happen, especially this early in the season. And he got off to a little bit of a late start in spring training too. The thing with me is like it is with everybody else, though. The velocity is concerning. The dips in sort of where the fastball sits from a velo standpoint, I think are not normal for them to have that kind of range. And so, that's typically not a thing where it's like, oh, he's fatigued or something like that. That's something that is either injury related or mechanical. And, the Dodgers, the fact that an overly cautious organization when it comes to pitching health is still running him out there tells me that there's nothing behind the curtain in terms of a health concern. So it's just him, I think, trying to find all of his points, trying to get his mechanics dialed in and consistent, and I think that once he does that, I think we'll start to see him be as effective as he was again last year.
Yeah, no, he was fantastic last year. I think there's enough guys around too that if he does struggle, that somebody else will pop right in and be just fine too. Like a Justin Robleski is going to be a part of the 6-man rotation now, so we're going to see a little bit more of that. But I do like Sheehan. I thought he was very important last year, especially with the piggybacking and just what he was able to come in and be able to do while some of the other guys were out. But Sheehan is a guy that I think that can be very effective. And I trust him more than I trust Roki, despite the fact that Roki had an okay start in his last one. Would you say an encouraging start? Not, maybe I wouldn't say good start, but an encouraging one in his last one. And we're going to eventually see Roki on Sunday. So what are you expecting there?
Yeah. I think when you consider what expectations were for Roki coming into that start, it was very promising. It wasn't perfect. He didn't look like he had everything figured out. But the fact that we were talking about, will this guy get out of the first inning, and he gave you 4+ and gave up 1 run, is very encouraging. It is definitely something to work off of. The fastball command was not great, but it was better, right? It wasn't, a third of his fastballs weren't off the graph, off the chart when you look at the game day view or something like that, right? Like he was getting better at getting it dialed in a little bit. So that was promising. The splitter looked effective. I saw some people wondering about the splitter command. That's not a pitch that he commands like that. Like it's something, it's almost like a knuckleball. Like you're not worried about command of a knuckleball. And that splitter sort of for him acts as a knuckleball, which makes it so effective. The one thing that was pretty impressive was he used that hybrid cutter, sinker, I think people still don't know exactly what it is, and that's
Gyro
totally
slider or whatever they were calling it. Yeah.
It's totally fine. It moves in the direction that he needs it to move, which is away from right-handed hitters. And that seemed to be pretty like dialed in for what it is and for Roki Sasaki. And so I think you take a look at all those things, and it's all signs are encouraging, especially considering where the bar was for him and where the expectations were for him going into that first start. I think as much as anything, we can be damned. For Roki Sasaki, I think that had to be a confidence boost.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's the pressure that we have put on Roki since he's gotten here, I think has been a little unfair. We've seen guys come in and be really, really good, in other places and come in right away and be good, especially when you have younger guys like Paul Skeens that are just blowing everybody away. And Roki was tagged as has the potential, didn't say that he was, but the potential to be the best of all of the Japanese pitchers when he was coming over. And that was by either Buster Olney or Jeff Passan. I forgot which one that said it, but they were talking about how this guy could be the best of all of the Japanese pitchers. And so we put this high pressure on him. And then when we moved him to the bullpen last year, he was great. And I loved his resilience by being awful, being sent back to the minors, coming up and being an important integral part to the pitching staff in the playoffs. So now you bring him back this year and we put all of this pressure on him again. Oh, he's got a third pitch. He's going to be Roki Sasaki. And he was horrendous in all throughout spring. And then finally it was no runs and in 4 innings one run in 4 innings. That's a massive, massive win. It was only 2 walks. So the next one needs to be better, and they just has to keep getting better and better and better. But I think we put a little bit too much pressure onto Roki as a fan base in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Some of that was, I think, our own, well, Shohei's really good and we have him, and Yamamoto's really good and we have him. So this guy's also Japanese and a pitcher and we have him. So he's going to be really good. Coupled with, a few publications naming him the top prospect in baseball.
Yep.
And some national media saying like this guy could be great. I think all of that, and some of his accolades in Japan too, obviously, made us think like, okay, this guy could be a frontline kind of starter on day one. He was always going to be a project. He was always going to be a prospect. And I think the Dodgers knew that. They probably didn't know it would go as bad as it did last season. And I don't think they expected it to look as bad as it did during this spring training. I don't think anybody did, himself included. And so, if he can build off of this last start, go to Washington, have another, good start, let's call it, maybe he gets through 5 and he gives up 2. Now we're starting to cook with some gas here. I think those 2 starts, together can be promising, because the name of the game, I think, once you get into the regular season, the name of the game is, can you prevent runs? Sometimes it doesn't matter exactly how it looks, but can you stop the other team from scoring, which is what he did in the playoffs. Under the hood, all the numbers weren't great, but he gave up 1 run in 10 plus innings, 10 innings, in some really high leverage spots. So if he can get back to being the guy who can prevent runs, they have something then.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with that. And so basically the moral of the story for today's Blue Review is everything is going to be fine. They're still 4-2. They're still number 1 in the division. Their offense has not been great, but the pitching staff has been great. I even think the bullpen has been great, but we don't have very much time left here. So it's the last thing that I need to talk to you about is the hat. So I've now seen you and Jeff Spiegel with the gold brim and the gold lettering. I love it. I love that hat. People say they don't like it. I love it. I think every time I look at it, I think it looks better and better. You wearing it, I'm like, that is a good looking hat. I've always said I don't think I could rock that hat, but more I see it, I think I can do it. Like it's a good hat. Why don't people like it?
You know what? When I first saw it, I was like, okay, that's better than what they had last year. I still don't know if I'm the biggest fan of it. I'm going to buy it, but I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of it yet. So I bought it and I was like, this looks better in person. Okay, cool. Then I went to the games last Friday and last Saturday at Dodger Stadium, and you see them all over the place, and I'm like, you know what? Like, this is kind of growing on me. By the time I left there Saturday after the game, I was like, these hats look pretty dope. I'm in on them. So I'm a bigger believer than I was when they first came out, and I do think they look better in person for sure. And you know what? I think you should get one, and I think you can pull it off. You have the eyebrows for it.
Oh man, why? See, I was not going to bring up the eyebrows at all. Now the rest of my day is all going to be about my eyebrows again. You've already done this once to me, Machado. I don't want to do it a second time. So, hey, everybody say they fit my face. Okay, so no matter what you think, yes, they're larger than your eyebrows. They're not like guys that don't even have eyebrows. Like I think you mentioned Charlie Villanueva, who was just clear faced. But I think they look good. I think they fit my face well, especially with the big bushy beard.
I think they do. I think you're a handsome fellow.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. All right, that's going to do it for the Blue Review. Thank you all very much for being a part of it. Thank you in the chat. Sorry that we didn't get to the chat today, but we will next week. It's going to be Emmet Sheehan, Tyler Glasnow, and Roki Sasaki over this weekend against Washington, and the big series up against Toronto starting next week in Toronto, where there's going to be lots and lots of booze. Thank you guys very much. Thank you to LAX, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Don't forget, Sit Down on Cap coming up next. See ya.